You're listening to Psych with Mike, and the most important way to support the show is to find us on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. So no matter how you listen to Psych with Mike, find us on YouTube, smash the subscribe button, and we really appreciate it. Now, here's Psych with Mike. Welcome into the Psych with Mike and Brett Library. I'm Dr. Michael Mahan.
And I'm still Brett Nickel.
Yeah, I flubbed it up. Hopefully I'll remember to cut that off.
I hope you don't. I think you should leave it.
Just leave it there.
Yes, in vino veritas.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So we are going to talk today about some of the challenges, pitfalls, whatever, of building a practice. Yeah. I think that we oftentimes, I know when I was going to graduate school, so when I went to graduate school, I was already working in behavioral health, had been working in behavioral health for a long time. It was amazing to me that when I went to grad school, people would we would do a lot of role play. That's what you do in grad school when you're learning to be a therapist.
I hate role play.
But we would do it, and people would say, "Oh, I'm just so self-conscious about sitting in a room talking to somebody." I'm like, "Wow, but then what are you doing here?" Because that's like the whole job. I'd been doing that since I was 19, 20 years old. In the hospital, they just told you to go in and go do therapy with this person
or group,
yeah. Right? And so that was never something that I found particularly off-putting. But when I went into practice, I did wonder, okay, so how do you do this? What's it going to be like? When I left the hospital and went into practice with you guys at West County Psychological Associates, I remember saying to my wife, so I had a 401k. I've been working in the hospital for 20 years. I had an actual 401k. I said, I'm going to liquidate my 401k. That's going to be my salary for 1 year. And if at the end of that year, I'm not making more than I was working at the hospital, then I'll quit and go find a real job. And she said, okay.
Go find a real job.
Yeah. And truthfully, I mean, by the end of that year, I had doubled my income, and I've never, ever, this is true, I have never made less in a year than I did the previous year. That's never, ever happened to me. I've always either made the same amount, roughly, within $100, or made more. But I think that the reason is because of the support that I got in the group practice. I came into a practice with a model of how to do that and the connections to get me in front of to be able to build a practice. If you were doing that on your own, I think that it would be incredibly difficult and incredibly overwhelming.
So you're talking about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
How it worked for you 30 years ago. And it worked similarly for me 30 years ago. So I have some questions about how one would do it today.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm retired. I don't see clients anymore. Don't have an open office. And I'm content with that. But if I were to start a new practice today,
mm-hmm.
what would I do and how would I manage to get it going?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you have to define your terms. What do you mean by get it going? Do I see 5 clients a week, 10
right.
clients a week,
right.
20 clients a week? Realizing, a lot of issues come into play. What do you have to offer the market?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a provider and you want to say, hey, y'all come, I'm really good at this, I can help. How do you get the word out there?
I also think that it's important to think about what you're going to set your fee at. Because a lot of times, I think people come into practice thinking,
the old analogy we used to use, are you the Kmart or are you
right.
the Cadillac? Yeah.
Well, I'll charge, 10% of what everybody else is charging
right.
because that'll be more money than I was making at my last job. And then people will be attracted to that. And that may not actually be true. People may not be attracted to the lowest priced therapist in the market.
They often are not. And often the ones who are angry and frustrated because that's all they can get.
Right.
I had to take you because I don't have any money and you
right.
don't charge much.
Right.
But also it's driven in some measure by our understanding of the way the medical system works.
Mm-hmm.
which is constantly evolving and constantly changing. When we both started practicing, we both worked to and were advised to get our names on insurance panels. I want to be a provider for XYZ insurance company. And then these companies would go out to corporations and sell what they call a capitated practice.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come to John Brown's manufacturing company, and they have 10,000 employees, and I will say to them, for $40,000, I'll give you licensed therapists who will give X number of sessions to however many you have. So my gamble there as the company, insurance company,
Mm-hmm.
is you aren't going to have that many clients that will make use of that opportunity. My gamble as a clinician is I'm going to at least have a base of clients that
Mm-hmm.
come from this referral source so that I can stand on that while I try to find other clients.
Mm-hmm.
So then the insurance companies would cut deals with us. You normally charge $100 an hour.
Right.
I'll pay you $75 an hour. However, in return for that, I want some control over
Mm-hmm.
what you do and how often you see them and whether or not you keep notes and all that kind of stuff. And I'll make those referrals to you. I'll populate your office.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, when you're first starting out, you're like, oh, yeah, I would love that. That way I'll be busy and I'll make a lot of money. Didn't often work that way. It got to be incredibly frustrating. The insurance companies played all kinds of games.
Mm-hmm.
And every therapist that I've known over the last 40 years has eventually stopped taking third-party reimbursement.
Right.
They say, what I will do is fill out the paperwork that you need so that you, the client, can interact with your insurance company and get reimbursement. But I won't wait for their payment, and I won't work for their payment, which breaks the connection to the insurance companies.
Mm-hmm.
Once you are established and have an established practice, what you learn is that most of your new business comes from satisfied former business.
Mm-hmm.
In the interim, there are several ways to try to create that reality. One of those is to find an audience to put yourself in front of, which we're trying to do here with YouTube video
Mm-hmm.
and a podcast audience that listens. They may think and say, well, I could talk to that guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look for us and find out, well, we're 5 states away, or we're retired, or
Right.
we're talking
Right,
heads,
right.
or what have you. Or their insurance doesn't pay us, or whatever. So it may not work out that way, but it may. Some of our business might come from there. What we used to do is we get in front of populations that we had some expertise
Mm-hmm.
in addressing. I remember I have an adopted child. I was asked to give a speech before the Adoptive Parents Association of St. Louis because I knew some things about the whole process of adoption and the experience of dealing with adoption. And then from that, I got several clients. I gave speeches all over town and all over several states, from which I would regularly get clients. Maybe even a year or a year and a half later, somebody would call me and say, well, my sister saw you give a speech at such and such place a year ago, and she kept your card. And I'd like to bring my son in to see you, or I'd like to come in and see you. So that's how it used to happen. My question today is, how does it happen today?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about mediated conversations. We talk about technological connections, Zoom sessions, online sessions,
Right.
phone sessions, text sessions. Insurance companies are trying to buy computer programs that they're just a program.
Mm-hmm.
So you call in and talk to a computer and you say, I'm really depressed. And the computer says, say more about that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you suicidal? Here's the suicide hotline number. Call them. I don't know. And I would be at a loss today to start clean and fresh right out of school. How do I build a practice?
Mm-hmm.
Do I use Facebook? Well, for a while, Facebook was the hottest thing in town. Now it seems to be mostly older people that use Facebook. And younger people have moved on to Instagram and TikTok and even newer iterations that I don't know about. And so then if I were trying to build a practice today, I'd have to find out what those are and get myself out there. One of the biggest reference sources and research sources around is LinkedIn. Can I get myself established on LinkedIn? Can I get people to notice what I have to say? Can I offer a workshop? Can I offer a pithy essay, 3 paragraphs, about something really meaningful? You do a 1-minute TikTok thing. How's that working for you?
Are you asking me a
Yes, I
question?
am.
Oh,
Yeah.
so I had a client come in.
Well,
This was,
first of all, may I?
yeah,
You, during the pandemic, closed your practice and
right,
said, I can't do this online stuff.
yeah,
I don't think it's real therapy, and I'm burned out.
yeah,
Took a couple of years off, reestablishing your practice now,
right.
repositioning yourself to say, I'm available, come in and see me. How are you dancing that dance today?
So I originally, so let me just set the stage by saying that for 7-8 years, I was the clinical director of one of those capitated insurance programs, an EAP, in town in St. Louis that I won't identify, but I was the clinical director, and I know that at that time, and I haven't been associated with them now for almost 5 years, and at that time we had bots in our system, so that with the initial first touch, when somebody would call into the system, was the bot.
Yeah.
And then if the bot got to a point and did exactly what you're talking about, I'm depressed. Oh, say more about that. Oh, I just feel like that it's not even worth it. Oh, are you feeling suicidal? The point at which the bot it got
We
triggered.
call a real person.
Yeah,
Take this call
exactly.
on line 4.
It would go. It would immediately go and flag a real person. But the insurance companies, they were doing that back then. They are investing heavily into this technology because they would like to eliminate as many real people in our profession as possible. So anybody who is doing online therapy, you are signing your own death warrant. I'm not going to,
belabor that.
right.
Yeah.
But it is true, and we've already talked about in other episodes that being connected online is not the same as being connected in person. You are missing too much information to call it genuine therapy if you're doing it online. And anybody who thinks that's not true, you can contact me. I am very, very available. I can present to you my research and my position on this, and you can present yours. And we may decide that we agree to disagree, but I am saying to anyone who is listening to this, online therapy is not the same as in-person therapy. It's just not the same. But to answer your question, so I was this clinical director at this insurance company, and I got on TikTok because a client of mine said, "Oh, I'm getting all of my therapy through TikTok," and I'm like, "What are you talking?" And this was just before the pandemic, and I said, "That's insane. You shouldn't be doing that." But she said, "Oh, you should do some stuff on TikTok."
You need to be careful using words like insane to
Oh,
clients.
yes. I should.
You're crazy as hell.
And I'm not sure that I said that that's
Okay, I'm
insane
sorry.
to her.
That was a segue. Never
Yeah,
mind.
but you bring up a good point. I should be carefuler with that while I'm talking on this show. So because people could get the wrong impression. So
Or the right one.
So I said, well, unfortunately, yes, or the right one. So I said, oh, well, I'm going to try this. So I did a couple of TikToks and got no traction, got nothing. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to quit this. So I put one out that went viral, and I got 100,000 followers, and people started calling me saying, hey, do you want to push this product? Hey, do you want to push this product? Hey, do you want to push this product? And I said no to all of those things because I didn't want to push any product. But what ended up happening is that people started actually interacting with the TikTok site. And then, yes, I got to a point where I felt overwhelmed, and I took a sabbatical and have now come back to doing therapy as my primary gig. And the TikTok thing is not something that I see as a viable way for me to disseminate myself online. Some of my TikToks get very well viewed, some of my TikToks don't. But I do think that, like for the book and other things like that, there is a marketing avenue that is available through TikTok that I do plan on accessing when we get to the point of actually marketing the book. Where I think that it is important, or where it has been successful for me going back into practice, is name recognition. You told me the day that I started in private practice that if you cannot survive off of referral from other happy clients,
Satisfied customers,
you will not be able to do this for any extended period of time. And I think that's true. I think that what happens is if you provide good service, people start to praise you in circles where they are active, and that creates.
There used to be a clothing manufacturing sales company in St. Louis, and their motto was, our most satisfied customers are educated consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a marketing line
Absolutely.
that I really like.
Now, what I will say is when I've always been on Psychology Today. I'm still on Psychology Today.
As a site to get referrals from.
Yeah. So Psychology Today
kind of like LinkedIn
has one of the largest databases of clinical,
Yeah.
People doing therapy anywhere. And when I was on that before the pandemic, I would get at least 2 phone calls every month from people from Psychology Today. Some of those would turn out to be clients who would come in and see me, and then they would stay for a long time, and some of them didn't. But I would get at least 2 of those phone calls a day. I've been on Psychology Today since when I went back into practice in June. So for 6 months now, this is the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. And in that 6-month period, I've gotten 0. And so I started doing the research. And what has happened is that Psychology Today is now inundated. There's a group practice called Rula, which is an online group practice. And they're not the only one, Rula, R-U-L-A, but there are others like BetterHelp and Headspace and all these others. And Rula is the only one that is working with Psychology Today. If you go on Psychology Today right now and search my zip code, which is 63127, is Sunset Hills, where my office is, you're going to see 1,000 returns. 900 of those returns are going to be people from Rula. And 100 is going to be, so it's almost a 9-to-1 ratio, just from my very, very cursory research.
Close to being a monopoly.
Yes, and all of those people are individuals living in different states. And they are getting multi-state licensed through these companies. Like if you go on BetterHelp, Headspace, Rula, whatever, the first thing they're going to do is really, really pump you to start working with them to get licensed, get reciprocity. They call it reciprocity in different states. So yes, my primary license is in the state of Missouri, but they want me to be licensed in Illinois and Arkansas and Kansas and all this other stuff so that I can see people online from all of these different areas.
Well, during the pandemic, that
was suspended.
Process was exempted. You didn't have to be
Right.
locally licensed.
Right.
Because they wanted people to have access to health care.
Yes.
Especially mental health care. But as the pandemic has resolved itself, the politicians are starting to say, well, wait a minute now, we want to come back and have our state licensure be the defining factor.
Right, because the state licensure is how the state makes money.
Right.
And so if everybody in the world can do therapy in Missouri, then the Missouri licensure is less good. There's going to be less people getting licensed in Missouri, less money for the Division of Professional Registration in Missouri. Now in Missouri, so some states have rescinded that that process of ignoring being able to practice. So in the olden days, you were prohibited from practicing across the state line if you didn't have a license in the other state. So we live in St. Louis, which is on the border of Missouri and Illinois. We were prohibited from seeing clients from Illinois if our license was in Missouri. During the pandemic, that was suspended. You could see
unless they came to Missouri to see us.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, essentially, you were still prohibited. But if they came to Missouri, you didn't have to.
Right.
You didn't have to say no. I won't see you. But you couldn't go to Illinois and see them.
Right.
So during the pandemic, that was suspended. Now, some states have re-implemented that, and Missouri is one. So if you go on the Division of Professional Registration for Counselors in the state of Missouri, there is a letter that went into effect in September that said that you are no longer allowed to practice with a Missouri license outside of the state of Missouri.
And that was a decision made by the Missouri State Board.
The Committee for Professional Registration of Professional Counselors in the state of Missouri. Yes.
Yeah.
And so there are other states that have done that also. But the way that these online companies are getting around that is they're getting you licensed in other states.
Yeah.
So you can be licensed in Missouri and North Carolina. And then you can see people from North Carolina online because you are licensed in that state.
And you pay a licensing fee to the state
Yes.
of North Carolina, and the
Right.
state of Missouri, the state of Illinois.
And these online companies help facilitate that. They
Right.
make the process easy
Because
so
in
that you
return,
can
they're
get
going to
reciprocity.
populate your
Yes,
client base.
that's right. And so it's getting really, really hard for individuals to find access to a database of local therapists that they can see in person.
Yeah. And so then they ask their friends, and they ask other people. They ask their physicians. They ask their ministers, their preachers, their priests.
If
their
they do want to
rabbis.
see somebody, and more people are just accepting
Yeah.
that the way you do therapy is online because that's how everybody's doing it.
Well,
And that's
it makes it a little easier for them too. I can go up in my bedroom upstairs and sit and do a session. I don't have to get dressed. I don't have to drive to an office somewhere.
Right.
I don't have to be visibly exposed to somebody.
But think about what that means for depression.
Yeah.
You know, when we treat people with depression, the thing that we say to them is get out of bed and take a shower. You can be depressed now and talk to your therapist and
You
not have
can't-
to do any of those
You can't
things.
do that online? I think it's a fascinating conversation, and it's a real challenge for somebody starting out. You have to find a connection. You have to find a referral source. You have to get your name established as having some level of capacity or expertise. And in the meantime, for whatever clients you do have, you have to do good therapy.
Right. And so
And-
to answer your question directly that you had originally asked me, how am I finding it now that
Yeah.
I've come back off a
Right.
sabbatical? The day that I went back into practice, I sent a message out, a text blast,
Yeah.
just telling people that I'd had relationships with in the past that I was in practice. The next day, I was seeing 5 clients a week.
Yeah.
Just because and this had been 2 years of not practicing at all.
Right.
And so just because my name was known well enough and respected well enough, immediately I had people populating my book. And obviously since then I've gotten new clients in addition to that. But that's the power of having a good reputation and doing good work.
So it's a balance line because there is a tremendous amount of unserved need. You just have to get your name in front of them saying, hey, I could serve some of this population potentially. And having an established reputation where satisfied former clients will send their connected individuals to you because
Right.
they trust you.
Right.
In the meantime, you have to deal with the regulatory agencies, the insurance agencies, the payment systems, the political systems. It's a compound, complex problem.
Yeah.
And we wish you luck.
Yeah. Yeah. So, are we on a time?
We are.
Oh, okay.
But you can keep going on.
I was on a caffeine-fueled soliloquy,
Yeah.
but no, it's probably better. So yes, I agree 100%. So for me, my parting statement, my parting encouragement, advice would be this: the first thing that you should do is decide how you're going to practice. Are you going to be somebody that's going to go on the online markets? I'm not condemning anybody for doing that. I understand that is the way that things are today. I don't believe that that is genuine therapy. And again, if anybody wants to talk to me about that, I would certainly have that conversation. But you got to decide, are you going to do that? If you're going to be a person who's going to see clients primarily in practice, your goal is to establish that reputation of doing good therapy so that you get referrals from
a physical site within a community.
Yes.
Yeah, that you serve.
And the most important aspect, so then to me, the next thing that you need to figure out, because you can find an office anywhere. I mean, you can just go around and find, I mean, those are things you have to do, but you can do that. The next most important thing is deciding what your fee is going to be. And my recommendation is that you survey the area that you are in figure out what is the median price for therapy in your locale and try and target a number somewhere around that. So don't be the highest person in the market, but also don't be the lowest person in the market. Don't be afraid to ask people for whatever that median is, because that's what the expectation is for people who are seeking therapy in your area.
And one of the challenges, if you're a brand new therapist trying to get started, is understanding the importance of getting paid for what you do.
Amen.
I mean, obviously, personally, it's important because you've got to pay your bills. But secondarily, it's a therapeutic issue.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully your training will teach you about all that.
And it's hard because if you're in the helping profession, you're probably in the helping profession because you're not the best business person.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a balance. So
right.
If you have questions about this topic, please send those to us. You can get us, you can leave a comment on the YouTube page, or you can send us an email directly through psychwithmike.com. The music that appears in Psych with Mike and Brett is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike and Brett. Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Welcome into Mike and...
And I'm Brett Newcomb. How are you?
Okay, you ready?